Greetings and welcome to this edition of
Positronic hypersonic.
Positronic hypersonic.
Positronic hypersonic.
I'm Barry P. Cook, and I'm here to talk to you about the latest episode of Star Trek Starfleet Academy. It was called The Life of the Stars, which is a segment of a line of dialogue expressing a central theme of the 1938 play Our Town by American playwright Thornton Wilder. The whole line is the life of the village against the life of the stars. So that's going to play heavily in the episode, which starts with the Doctor reflecting on his unique life. He asks in his personal log, "How many dawns have I seen?" And this is occurring against the backdrop of conflicts and confusion continuing to escalate for and between the cadets, even weeks after the Miyazaki incident, at one point causing Jet Reno to summarize the cadets' performance in an emergency simulation as a spectacular failure of teamwork. Tensions only get higher when Terima returns to the academy with a new inhibitor so that she can't hurt anyone, and seemingly not at all happy that it was decided for her that she was better off being transferred to Starfleet Academy versus going back to the War College so that she could do safer things, like in the science field, to protect against another incident proving fatal for her or, for that matter, others. To get the cadets back on course, Chancellor Ake decides that she needs serious reinforcements, in her words, and that turns out to be Lieutenant Sylvia Tilly from the USS Discovery, who returns to the Academy from a rotation in the Beta Quadrant to teach an emergency drama class as trauma counseling undercover. Upon hearing about this class, only one cadet is excited, and, it's Sam. She approaches this with her usual enthusiasm and decides to read like every play ever written. But at the same time, she's got her own issues going on because she's been trying to hide her persistent glitches, which weren't corrected by her stay at a special holo clinic over the recent holiday. She does, however, pick a play for the class to study called Our Town, and she picks it because it's about a small town but also something bigger. Before all of the roles can be handed out to the various cadets, however, Sam collapses in a flurry of glitches. It turns out that she's been hiding her glitches from the Doctor, but finally admits that she's lost control. And the diagnosis is that she's caught in an unending loop of overloads and resets, and the Doctor doesn't know how to stop it. Chancellor Ake decides that Sam's only hope lies with her creators on Cask, so she and the Doctor commandeer a shuttle and take her home. During the trip, Sam reveals that Cask exists within accelerated time, a concept that the Doctor is, of course, familiar with given his experiences in the Voyager episode Blink of an Eye. Feeling kinship with the Doctor, Sam, of course, continues to try to make connections with him. But the Doctor is determined to remain clinical, so he continues to rebuff these efforts on her part. In fact, the Doctor ends up ordering her to power down before she glitches again. When they arrive at Cask, they find themselves in a virtual world, conveniently structured like the Academy, in an effort to make them feel at home. The creators talk about how they wouldn't normally allow a visit from outside, but they did in this case because of Sam's condition. And they also say that they will digitally connect with her en masse to try to figure out the problem. And they do in fact determine that all of the things she's experienced at the Academy are the problem, and that the problem is unrepairable. So they order her to terminate, to shut down. Back at the Academy, the cadets don't know what's happening on Cask, but they do miss Sam, whom before she left gifted Terima the lead part in the play. The students find it hard to focus in class, and they even argue with Tilly, especially Terima, who lashes out, refusing to see how she parallels Our Town lead Emily. Later, she continues to spiral straight into a bottle of booze. Caleb is initially amused by her inebriated disposition, and he's happy she's finally talking to him, but when he won't take things between them beyond a kiss given her state, she lashes out at him, claiming that he, and really everyone, just see her as some kind of monster. She then demonstrates that she's a bit jealous of Genesis, with whom she senses that Caleb has a connection. But Genesis is just too nice to Terima, who is now Genesis and Sam's roommate. So she breaks down and cries herself to sleep holding Genesis's hand, revealing that she feels like she has no choices anymore. When drama class resumes the next day, the cadets are starting to get into the play, and the message behind it, but Terima still resists. She calls out Tilly for using the play to get them to reveal their pain, even as she declares herself to be just like the play's ghost girl, a reference to the fact that her character dies in the play. But Tilly pushes back against this, telling Terima she is no ghost girl because she gets to come back, though Terima isn't buying it and she walks away. Later, not knowing what to do and missing their friend Sam, the rest of the cadets step up to the occasion under Occam's leadership, and they start doing like a standing read of the play, each reading their various parts in turn. On Cask, the Doctor reveals that the reason he's been reluctant to bond with Sam is because she reminded him too much of his dead holographic daughter from the Voyager episode Real Life, and that he just didn't want to expose himself to the pain of possibly losing her that he would experience if he got close to her and then something happened to her. Chancellor Ake and the makers have another back and forth conversation, and it comes to light that it wasn't really the blast on the Miyazaki that killed Sam, rather how they never gave her the programming to process the trauma that followed. And the captain proposes a radical solution: remake Sam, but this time with a childhood, including a father. And to that end, the Doctor, who knows he's been a coward, decides to take on the role, and that he will live with her for 17 years on Cask, which of course on Earth will only be a few days' time. As the cadets continue their reading of the play back at the Academy, Terima is now ready to join as Emily, saying, "You got to love life to have life." And it seems that at this point they've made a breakthrough in their journey to working their way through their trauma. The course having completed, Tilly is departing the Academy, but before that, Terima makes a point of thanking her, at which point Sam returns to everyone's delight, and we see the captain is proud that the cadets are again seemingly ready to live every moment. And that's where the episode ended. I'm a theater kid. I was in plays in junior high, and then high school I was in the drama club, and I acted on stage in college. My degree program in my first 2 years of college was theater, so I have an associate's degree in theater. And so, this episode resonated with me. I'm a fan of the arts, and there is something therapeutic, I think, in art. It's why Star Trek, for example, has so much meaning for us Star Trek fans to begin with, that it keeps us in touch with our humanity. And so the concept of this episode, for the A-plot anyway, being that, theater can be a catharsis, makes sense to me. So I enjoyed that aspect of it. And I thought that, some of the work they did for these characters via the theater class setup was very good and, in fact, poetic. But like so much of the stuff in the show, it doesn't fit in the context of a professional academy in Star Trek all that well. I mean, it worked for me, and I think it works in the context of a YA drama, or for that matter, in the context of any drama about people experiencing trauma. But I don't think that it really fit within the context of a professional academy in Star Trek. So, I have qualms about that. But, again, some of the moments in this episode I thought were great for the characters. There were great moments of human drama that help to highlight the human condition and how we experience the human condition. And that's what Star Trek is largely about historically. So I really appreciated that. But, even at that, even with that aspect of the episode being good, it was uneven. Sometimes working really well, and at other times just coming off forced or clunky. Like, in the beginning, the scene where they're going through the emergency scenario, the dialogue in that situation was really pathetic for characters that are supposed to be officers in training. It was very unprofessional and, was more suited to a group of characters in a generic show that isn't set in an elite academy. And so it's kind of like the writers, who I think are trying. I think overall the writers are trying. I think the show is way better than Discovery. And I think, like I said, they do have strong moments in most of the episodes. But it's uneven, and it gives me the impression that they are really trying to write good dialogue and, stories that explore the human condition sometimes. And then other times they're just, okay, let's write this quick scene where the cadets are failing at doing an emergency simulation. And so it comes off clunky and amateurish. And I think that's unfortunate because other parts of it are so good. Another issue I think the show has is that half the cast are really good actors and the other half isn't. Like the young lady that plays Genesis, I think she's fantastic. I think the kid that plays Caleb is good. And I'm finding, though his character is not my favorite, the actor that plays Darum is a really good actor. I really like his acting. The kid that plays Jaden, on the other hand, terrible. The young lady playing Tarima, though I like her character a lot, and though a lot of it may be the dialogue that they're giving her, I don't think she's the best actress. I think even when she has good dialogue, she doesn't deliver it in a way that I would say she's playing her A game. I don't think she's terrible, but she's not as good as some of the other members of the young cast. The young lady that plays Sam is excellent. So maybe more than half the cast is good, and just a couple of the actors aren't great. Of course, Holly Hunter and Robert Picardo are fantastic. So anyway, the acting is hit or miss depending on the actor we're talking about, and I think that affects the overall quality of the show, unfortunately. One thing I didn't understand about the episode is why did anyone need to actually step in and be Sam's actual parent and go through the 17 years with her? She already had a set of experiences programmed into her, limited though they may have been, in order for her to behave like a person to the extent that she did when she started the academy. So we know they can program certain kind of like memories into her. Why didn't they just program her a past? Why did she have to experience it? You know what I'm saying? Like, why couldn't have it been done a la The Matrix? Just plunk in a bunch of subroutines that would have given her the emotional experiences that would have prepared her for going back to the academy. I don't know. Maybe we're supposed to take away that the Kaskians or whatever were incapable of that level of programming and that she needed to actually go through the process of growing up. But I don't know. I'm not sure I buy that. And I guess I'm a little troubled by the idea that, now she's had this whole lifetime to develop her own personality and her own emotional regulation and her sense of self and all of that. But she's still stuck having to fulfill the programming that they gave her of going to Starfleet Academy and being like an emissary. I mean, I suppose she wants to. I suppose she's excited about being able to do that. But at the same time, having gone through that whole 17 years, we're supposed to believe that that desire didn't change, that everything she learned, everything she developed about her personality and her psycho-emotional profile, none of it made her think, you know what, I want to be a gardener. That's kind of weird, right? She ended up at the same place, wanting to go back to Starfleet Academy. And they did say she would retain those memories, so that would make sense, but what are the odds? So I thought that was a little strange. The other thing I didn't like is that the way they left the episode with Tilly leaving and kind of going, okay, job well done, they're all cured now. You know what I'm saying? It kind of felt like that. And of course, that's not how that works. You can have a breakthrough, which I think, it would seem that is what actually happened in the episode. They had a breakthrough of a kind. They started down the path of healing their trauma. And so, given that, why is that the point at which Tilly would leave and not continue to work that cure, as it were, through additional theater education or theater application? Why is it time for Tilly to leave now? That didn't make sense. So I thought maybe they shouldn't have included her departure, and if they weren't going to keep Mary Wiseman around to sort of maybe let us think that she was still there by, having the cadets continue to make references to theater class in the rest of the episodes, although there are only 2 left this season, but they could have done that. And it wouldn't have made it seem like Tilly had performed a 3-day cure of all that was ailing them, psycho-emotionally. But I think the way they did it, it kind of leaves you that impression, which is ridiculous. I don't know, maybe they'll say stuff in dialogue in the next 2 episodes that makes it clear that they are still processing the trauma, but that what they experienced in the theater class was a turning point. Somehow I doubt it. But I would welcome that because the way it was left kind of makes it seem like, she did a 2-minute cure of their trauma, and that of course is ridiculous. The only other thing I would say is that I think having seen this episode and last week's episode, it would have made more sense if this week's episode had followed directly the events of the Miyazaki instead of an episode in between where you don't see any of this business about them being traumatized really and truly. You kind of see Caleb dealing with the fallout between he and Tarima, but you don't see where they're, all fractured and having trouble processing things, and none of that was present. In addition to that, they all go on holiday, which was presented as this joyous thing. And I guess it would be for everybody but these 8 or 9 kids, 6 or 7 kids, but even they were all sort of upbeat about it. And even that Darum went through the situation with his bride there, and Jaden kind of went through it with him. It was treated like it was happening in a bubble, like they were just dealing with that, situation, that moment, and that it wasn't affected at all by what had happened to them the week before. But yet, a couple of weeks later, we're back in the thick of this situation where they're all traumatized from the events of the Miyazaki. So I thought the episode should have maybe been swapped in the episode order. It would have made more sense. And there's no reason they couldn't have done that. So I don't know why they didn't. Very strange. Anyway, that's really it. Again, to summarize, I did like the episode. I found a lot of the moments to be endearing and to be worthy of Star Trek. I found some of the other moments to be endearing, though not necessarily compatible with Star Trek. And so between those two things, I liked the episode, but there were parts of it that I thought made the episode on the whole uneven because they were clunky and they seemed rushed, not only in the writing, but in the shooting. And so it's hard for me to give this episode more than a 3 out of 5. So I think that's unfortunate, especially given there are only 2 episodes left. And, they had at least 2 super clunkers in the first 8. But I don't know, maybe I'll do a season review video at the end. Maybe my finale video will sort of be a review of the whole season, that assess it on the whole after the finale. But yeah, I think these writers are trying. It seems like they can get it right part of the time, but there's just an aspect of it that they're missing, like a swing and a miss kind of thing. And that's frustrating because the good parts of this show and the good parts of these episodes and the good acting on behalf of the cast members who are good at acting make me want the show to be better than it is. And it just isn't right now, and it's frustrating. But I'm glad that it's better than Discovery. I really am, and I think I think it really is better than Discovery, and that makes me happy. But that happiness is tempered. Anyway, before I repeat myself any more than I already have, I'm going to get out of here. I'll be back with another video soon. Until I return, I wish you peace and long life.